quite a lot to talk to you about, and other topics on from that, including the thought police, something you've been a victim of yourself, as many of our viewers and listeners will know. Let's talk first of all about special constables being given tasers. This idea is that, it's trained police officers only that would normally be allowed to use tasers. They are can be a deadly weapon. There have been occasions where people have died as a result of being tasered. This idea that if they've got permission from a senior police officer and they have gone through the same training as a copper, they should be allowed to use tasers in certain circumstances. Do you agree with that or not?
Well, I think we've got to start from the principle and remember that the public are the police and the police are the public. Now, the public, as a rule, are not allowed to carry and use weapons. So it has to be in very, very special circumstances where the police are allowed to do that which the average citizen is not allowed to do. Now, of course, I understand that there are certain situations where a police officer is forced to go into a position of danger, and in such circumstances, it's right that there should be on hand somebody who is trained with a taser. However, that comes with a massive caveat. First of all, we want a professional police force. We want a professional police force that is trained and understands the law and understands the limitations of the law. And we also want a police station that is... Is that my dogs?
Well, listen, after that postman, that video, for goodness sake, don't kick it. There'll be trouble.
We also want a police service that understands common sense. And the problem, this is where it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
Because the College of Policing do not want police officers to operate with common sense. They want police officers to simply follow tick box guidance.
And that's where it all went wrong, isn't it? Because it used to be the coppers, again, any interaction, or you have to write it down. Now they can, they have to go down on this tick box exercise as opposed to exercising judgment. Not always perfectly, because we are all fallible human beings. But this is the thing. It's the idea, as you say, that we've basically outsourced violence in our society to the government, to the police, to the army, and we're not allowed to commit violence. But if someone is just a special constable, not a police officer, you're in very difficult circumstances. But then I would imagine a lot of the time they feel they can't step in and act because they haven't got access to any weaponry.
Well, they shouldn't need weaponry for the vast majority of the time. What they should have is access to somebody with weaponry.
Yeah,
well, that person, that officer, needs to have a vast amount of common sense.
Yeah.
And the College of Policing is conducting an assault on common sense. Following my particular case, where I whooped the asses of Humberside Police, I spoke to the Chief Constable and said, look, Mr. Freeman, why at some point did your officers not apply common sense? And he looked me square in the eye and said, Harry, you should know that common sense is not an appropriate tool for a police officer because it leads to unpredictable outcomes.
Was he joking?
No, what we need is more guidance. And this is what absolutely terrifies me because our British society is based on common law and it's based on common sense. It's based on common sense. And when we have a police force that actively resists common sense in favour of guidance and also actively encourages officers to not only police the law, but also police human rights, whatever they are.
And people's thoughts. Harry, let's take it back again. So you had a legal victory because you actually went to court to get this sort of... You've been accused of alleged transphobic tweets. You were accused, basically, of a thought crime. You hadn't actually committed any offence, but you said, I'm not going to have this on my record. I've not, I'm allowed to think what I want and say what I want. Recording your gender-critical views as a non-crime hate incident. And we've seen yesterday the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, and I'd say very, very welcome, him saying, look, we're not the thought police. Let's tackle crime, burglary, rape, violent assault, rather than policing people's thoughts. I mean, that's got to be something you welcome.
Of course, I absolutely welcome it. He also pointed out the fact that only around about 17% of crimes actually make it to court. That's terrible. Well, that's because when you have a limited resource in a police force, you can't have them policing Twitter and also policing the streets. You simply can't do that. Now, which is easier? I'll tell you which is easier. It's far easier to police tweets than to police streets. Yeah. And that they've taken the easy option because it allows them to tick their boxes and say, oh, look how successful we are. Yeah. But the problem is it corrupts the system. Yeah. It corrupts the system and it whilst it elevates so-called thought crime. It belittles actual crime.
The real crime that people watching and listening right now actually care about. Again, amount of times I hear police officers and others talking about minor crime like burglary. Ain't a minor crime someone coming in your home. Let me ask you about the policing of an event the other day in Manchester where women, adult human females, were arguing against the trampling on women's rights by trans activists, not by trans people, trans activists, and they were met by the men wearing all in black and black balaclavas, trying to block them being able to stand by the statue of Emmeline Pankhurst, of course, it was the suffragette. Very aggressive. And in fact, there was a man, all these activists, manhandling one of the women, and the police went and spoke to her and didn't step in. But I just bring up, last night on Piers Morgan Uncensored, Piers spoke to a trans activist who called themselves Jame after the Manchester Trans Rise Up group dressed up like this, attempting to block women from speaking about women's rights in front of that statue of Emmeline Pankhurst. And Jane repeatedly refused to engage Piers in any real debate, choosing instead to berate the host. Let's have a little listen to what happened.
I've always supported trans rights to fairness and equality, and I mean that sincerely. I want everyone...
bro.
Well, you can say bro, and that's fine. You're entitled to. It's an uncensored show, and you've just proven it. But let me just say to you, I always
wasn't your profile picture, identifying as a penguin?
There's no point swearing. I apologise to our viewers for your bad language. This is a chance for you to present yourself in a way where we can have a proper debate.
It's just absurd, Harry. You can't even have a proper debate with these people. Should the police have done more?
Well, the thing is, these people think they're Emily Pankhurst, don't they? And actually, they're complete and utter lunatics. And thank goodness we got that caught on camera. Yeah, the police should do more. I mean, if you and I turn up in favour of Posy Parker wearing balaclavas, I'll tell you now, we'll be arrested because we're on the wrong side of the political policing.
Absolutely. Listen, Harry, it's always so good to talk to you. Harry Miller, you've been an absolute hero for me.